Welcome everyone to another session of Office Hours. My name is Adrian. I am the CEO and founder of Groundhogg. And today is a little bit different because I'm actually joined by someone else who is going to be able to share their voice, unlike most times when it's just me repeating questions typed in. So now we actually have someone to talk to, and that's kind of exciting. Today, I didn't really have like an ideal way to phrase what I wanted to talk with Cory about, but based on his story and the research that I've done on Cory, I think trial and error finding the winner kind of sums it up really nicely. And I'm sure we'll talk to Cory about that. And Cory, of course, I mean that in like the nicest way possible.
Totally.
It's a really interesting story, and well, we'll get into it, and I'm really looking forward to it. So for everyone on this call, this session is being recorded. It's going to be posted to YouTube. It's going to be posted to Groundhogg Academy. So you'll be able to come back and rewatch it as many times as you want and find the golden nuggets out of it so you can implement those in your own business. If you have questions during the stream at any point, you can just go to the comment section. You can post questions there. Both Mike and Jesse, our awesome support people, are going to be monitoring that chat, making sure that any relevant links are posted and making sure your questions get answered. We have a topic today, which will probably take anywhere from 30 to 45 minutes. And then after that, we are going to have kind of an open Q&A session. So if you do have questions related to Groundhogg setup, troubleshooting, or just typical support stuff, you can wait till the end, and I'll be happy to walk through all of that with you and make sure that you get answers so that you can launch your funnel, grow your list, and scale your business. All right, and we're not quite at that Q&A point, so I'm just going to go ahead and stop sharing, and I am going to introduce Cory. So Cory is a WordPress plugin professional, plugin developer, plugin business person. And we've recently brought him onto the Groundhogg team as a developer and as someone who can provide a little bit of additional oomph behind Groundhogg 3.0, which we also desperately want to come out as soon as possible. So Cory is our latest addition to the team to make that happen in a very timely fashion. So for everyone on the call live right now, go ahead and jump in chat and just give Cory a nice warm welcome. And now I'm actually going to let him speak. So Cory, why don't you just go ahead and introduce yourself?
I'm Cory Moss, currently residing in New Hampshire in the United States. I've been building websites since the late 90s, building web apps since the early 2000s, and I've been over a decade focused pretty much on WordPress and products in the WordPress ecosystem.
And you've gone through a few products, and you have many products. When I went to, certainly more than myself, which is also extensive.
Yeah, I've been building products since 2001 or so, obviously pre-WordPress. But back then, starting to try to build out web apps and inspired by 37 Signals and Joel Spolsky and later people like Rob Walling. So pretty standard SaaS trajectory. But along the way, realized that this WordPress ecosystem was pretty special, and actually went to a WordCamp in Atlanta, I don't know, in 2010 or no, it couldn't have been 2012 or so anyway, and met a few people, most notably for me, the guys who founded Ninja Forums. And it suddenly clicked finally that you could build product and actually build a business, and it wasn't just selling a plugin for $5 on Code Canyon or what have you. You could actually build a business, and so I started looking for opportunities there and building basically bigger products, and I've had some middling successes.
So which product was your kind of like your first foray into trying to actually run a product business in WordPress?
Kanban. So I saw an opportunity where more and more small businesses are using WordPress as their control panel, their intranet, that kind of thing. And I was working at a startup at the time, and we decided as a small dev team that we needed some sort of project management. We looked at Trello, we looked at Atlassian, all the standard ones. And eventually we did choose one of those, but I, again, had a moment of clarity where I was like, wow, if I brought something like Trello into WordPress, then it's one less place where everybody has to log into. You can tie it into post types. There's lots of advantages. You control all of your data. That was a real big one, especially since GDPR was sort of happening at the time. And so that was the first big plugin that I tackled.
The reason that Groundhogg exists is that I identified a very similar concept where businesses wanted to use WordPress as their control panel, as their all-in-one solution to being able to sell, deliver, and fulfill their product, so that they'd ever only have to log into one place and everything works kind of seamlessly in this harmonious symphony of technology and plugins. It doesn't always work out that way, but
not at all. But it's a fantastic idea, and there's there's a time and a place, like anything, the right tool for the right job. But it's interesting because it does correspond with something that Matt Mullenweg said ages ago, and I picked up on it immediately. And a lot of people.
I'm just going to jump in and just clarify for those of you who don't know Matt Mullenweg, because a lot of people in our group are not WordPressers of the typical kind of stereotype, right? A lot of people in this group and a lot of people on this call, I see comments coming in from customers that I know personally, and a lot of them are agencies. So for those of you who don't know who Matt Mullenweg is, he's kind of like WordPress head honcho, CEO of Automatic, which of course is the WordPress benefactor, essentially. So I'm just going to jump in and just drop in that context.
Yeah, thank you. I apologize. I tend to default to WordPress insider baseball. Matt Mullenweg, known as the benevolent dictator of WordPress, kind of has the final say on the direction that WordPress, the ship, overall gets steered, and is famous for his, and again in the WordPress ecosphere, is famous for his annual recaps.
State of the word.
Correct. Yeah. And years ago he said, he made, obviously nothing is offhand, off the cuff, but he made a quick comment in one of his State of the Words saying, describing WordPress as I think what he wanted to see was WordPress become the operating system of the web.
I remember that. I remember that session.
And I don't think that it resonated with most people at the time, but people like you and I would have picked up on it, where because a lot of people were still thinking at the time about WordPress as a blog, maybe as a CMS, but some of us were starting to see it as essentially a platform for hosting applications. So something as powerful and extensive as Groundhogg, Kanban starts to get into that as well. And so it's basically a platform for hosting software, where you don't have to get into the server layer or mess around with PHP code and that kind of thing. You install and it works for you, or it doesn't, and you're off and running. And it's all these tools in one place.
It's certainly more realistic to view WordPress not just as a blog tool, which most people don't even really use anymore. Like a lot of people, like I do a lot of logging in to other people's websites, and then like probably 6 out of 10 times, blog's empty.
Yeah.
Right. And it's not even don't even view that as its core purpose anymore, because the technology, like PHP 8 is around the corner. And that has, I think, 25% efficiency improvements over 7, which had something ridiculous like 48 to 50% efficiency improvements over 5.
Yep.
Right? Then the technology just keeps getting better and better, where you can just load more and more and more responsibility onto it, where it totally eliminates the needs for outside third-party SaaS apps, which is really helpful for the bottom line. So I want to come back to this because I want to talk about Kanban, which is your main gig. I want to talk about that a little bit more, but I also want to rewind to product 0 for you. For me, it was FormLift, and that was kind of like product 0 for me. It was my first attempt at like a legitimate product application type deal. I'd like to learn a little bit about your product 0 was.
Inside WordPress or outside?
First products that you ever like, this is cool, I'm going to make this publicly available.
Oh, sure. I mean, from the beginning. So in the 90s, the reason that I taught myself web design, as it was called back then, nothing dynamic,
Tables. HTML tables. That's how the web was built.
Oh, it started with you'd make a design in Photoshop and then slice it up using what was it called? Fireworks. Or you could actually eventually the original Mozilla browser actually had an HTML editor built in. But anyway, yeah, you're absolutely right. Slicing up images and then piecing them back together with tables and hoping nothing broke. Tool
I remember is Dreamweaver.
Right, and that Dreamweaver was the first real power tool, and I used that from 98 to 2005 or something. I don't remember when I stopped, but yeah, for me, I was in college. I was also starting a music career, albeit a failed one, and was shown this internet thing by the kid across the hall. I hadn't really heard of it, or I'd heard of it, but I didn't really understand the power of it. And the first thing he did was he started showing me websites from some of his favorite bands. And these were famous bands, Red Hot Chili Peppers or whoever. And I said, well, if I put myself on there, then, the world has access to my music. And
they build it,
and
people will come.
I started. Yeah. And back then, to a small degree, that was true.
Mm-hmm.
But something changed early 2000s. It must have been 2000, 2001 for me. I started teaching myself ASP Classic because I was on Windows at the time. And so anything else was too foreign and too hard to set up. But I had already started dabbling in JavaScript because static web pages weren't as cool as the ones that had JavaScript where things moved around or, had behavior built in. And then obviously there was the appeal of having data, reload, and that required a database, and that required, and so the first thing I built was an event calendar for DJs and other electronic musicians. I was doing live electronic performances at the time, and so it was kind of in that world, and so created a calendar and encouraged everybody I knew to add their gigs, so that if you really wanted to go see some live electronic music, you'd go to this website.
So it's kind of like a global event calendar for that's actually a very cool concept. Does anything else like that exist?
No, it did not then, and does not now. I mean, now it's Facebook, or I guess that's not true. There's I'm totally blanking on the name. I could picture the label or the logo, but I can't think of it. Anyway, but there's certain websites that people will go to, and that's that's kind of the world we live in now, where everything's conglomerated. Is that a word? Brought together. You go to Facebook and you look at your events, or you go to, if it's not necessarily electronic music, more indie music, but you'd go to Pitchfork, and I'm sure they've got an events or gigs page, or that kind of thing. But yeah, I mean, at the time it didn't exist, and it was a pet project. It was free, and so I had a blast just making it do whatever I wanted. And I remember, so obvious calendar layout, and I had taken random pictures of fruit, and put them as the background of the calendar. So each month it would be a different, like a bowl of grapes, just because I thought it looked cool, and that was the joy of having a project like that.
Yeah.
And then I actually built a CMS, because I was building websites for a lot of my friends who were musicians, and I got tired of going in and adding gigs to their websites or whatever. And I was using Blogger, and had integrated Blogger, which allowed you to FTP changes and stuff, and it was pretty clunky. And I saw an opportunity, so I made my own CMS. That was the first thing that I tried to charge for, and I got about 4 customers. But it was also
I hope you charged a lot.
I charged $5 a month, because that's what you charged back then for things on the internet, based on nothing. There was no history at that point.
Right.
This is 2004. And we're only then starting to learn about things like value, or time is money, and vice versa.
Yeah.
And anyway, yeah, sank that pretty quick. But I started to get more interested in the whole startup world, and that had more and more, like, my mom knew what an incubator was, or what a venture capitalist was, and that to me was an indication that things were really taking off. So when I moved back to New York City in 2007, you could see that changing. There were more meetups, and I wound up in a co-working space, and then actually it was sort of, they called it a pre-incubator inside of a co-working space. So a room of the prerequisite to get in there, you couldn't just rent a desk, but the rate to rent a desk was much lower. And the prerequisite to get in there was you kind of had to prove that you were pursuing your own
You had
thing.
to have a good idea.
Right. And so you didn't necessarily have to be working on it full time, because again, they understood that this was, pre-funding, pre-incubation, whatever. But the idea was you were in a room full of other entrepreneurs, wantrepreneurs, babypreneurs, there's lots of terms, but it was fascinating. It was absolutely amazing to be in that room. And the original version of it only had 50 people in a pretty tight room. And it was phenomenal, because you could actually say out loud to the room, does somebody know somebody at Google? I need to integrate blah, blah, blah. And somebody would raise their hand. It was the coolest thing. But that only lasted for about a year. And so this was WeWork, which is now, famously
Defunct
and kind of blown their, they exploded or imploded, depending on how you want to look at it.
Yeah. I followed that WeWork thing, and it is an incredibly just disastrously fraught journey. It reminds me of, if anybody ever watches Silicon Valley, the BBC show, or no, it's an HBO show. It's an HBO show.
HBO. Yeah.
It's HBO. It's HBO. It's epic.
and when Silicon Valley, the show, came out, I was actually working at a startup in Nashville, and it was shocking how accurate it was. Yeah. And you're like, oh, my life is a comedy. I get it now. But yeah, WeWork, unfortunately, part of their thing was expanding too fast. So for people who are interested in that amazing story, there's a book out or coming out. There's a documentary that just came out. My wife and I are fascinated by these startup, crash and burn stories.
And it totally, I mean, if it hadn't imploded before last year spring, it would have.
Yeah.
Because I don't need to go into that any further, but let's go back to your incubator.
And so unfortunately, because of the nature of WeWork, which was to grow very fast, they said, oh, this 50 people in a room thing is working. Let's put 250 people in a room. And the whole thing fell apart for me, because the room was just too big. So it was too noisy. Any sense of community or network was gone. Amazing co-working spaces. Most of the floors, some of the floors, at least in New York, were themed, but almost every floor would have a kitchen, okay, like most offices, but they would also put in a lounge, would put in kegerators. And because we had 250 people in a room, you inevitably had, the jerk that would just play pinball all day. And so I remember a pretty awesome moment where a woman was meeting with a VC in one of these little pods, and here's this guy who's just going ding 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 playing pinball, and she finally went out and screamed at him because she's trying to negotiate millions in funding, and here's this guy, entrepreneur, just playing pinball all day. I mean, it just stuff like that, started to go crazy.
Well, I'm just going to take a second, and because there's a lot of people in our customer community and people on this call probably who run online digital communities.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's actually a very profound observation, where when you took it from 50 and you add 200 more people, the actual community broke down.
Yeah.
And I find that very interesting. So there's a sweet spot, I suppose, either up to 50 or between 50 and 250, where communication between people becomes significantly easier.
Well, and at this point, the answer to that is cohorts. And I think the smarter communities get that, and the smarter thought leaders or people who run online academies or communities get that. And so, thinking about online sales or again, running communities or what have you, you let in 50 people, you kind of keep them connected, have them run through some courses together, or have them do some webinars, or conversations or what have you. And then at some point graduate them, and they're obviously and strongly encouraged to still be around.
Mm-hmm.
And often many of them may come back to become like TAs or success stories or interviews of, what did this person learn and how did they put these things that they learned into effect or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But you create a small group within the overall group, and ideally you kind of move that forward and then create another one.
Well, for anyone on listening to this who's a Buddy Boss fanatic, because that's kind of like the big, either LearnDash groups or if you're using Buddy Boss, those are kind of like the two big community centric platforms that I see. I think focusing on limiting the size of groups may actually, based on your own observations, Cory, may actually be the way to enable people to get the most value out of whatever your program is.
Yeah,
it's a very interesting
I've seen the same with LMS setups. And so again, instead of it just being take this, sign up on your own and take this course whenever you want, there's a lot of value in setting a date. And I've walked through a couple of programs myself, one in particular that was about marketing for DJs in particular. That was really interesting. So 2 or 3 times a year, the guy who ran it would, essentially sign you up for his, courses or set of courses, but it had a start date and a sort of graduation date, and he'd let in 50 people or whatever, and a lot of other people were still around and still in the Facebook group who had graduated previously. And so I think what I want to emphasize is, there's a way to do this without limiting the size, because a lot of people would immediately say, well, if you limit the size, then how do you, keep growing the community? And if people leave, how do you get more people to come in and be part of that community? And then also uh, if it's a money making opportunity, obviously you don't want to limit the number of people. So there's ways to fix that basically. And then anyway, so it was interesting to be in that co-working space and see that happen. For me at the time, I had started on I built a number of products, um, basically a private version of SoundCloud that I regret putting down, but I just got fed up with it. Um, a number of other little products that I dabbled in, but it was amazing being around all these people openly discussing ideas, and I think that was one of the big special things about being in New York City at that time, being in the startup scene and world. There were a lot of meetups, there were a lot of conferences, and it wasn't yet all about venture capital. And so there was a lot more bootstrapping, and that was really amazing. And that led to my next. It was never a financial success, but I got a lot of traction with a product I built called the Birdie. I sat next to a guy who built an app called, oh my God, oh, this is bad. I feel very guilty that I can't think of what it's called. But anyway, a little productivity tool that would email you every day and just say, what did you do today, or what did you do yesterday? And there were online, or there were regular diary apps like this, but this was really meant to be more of a productivity tool and kind of a predecessor to the there are now like daily stand-up apps that'll email you and say, what did you do yesterday, and then to your whole team, and then send it to everybody so everybody kind of knows what everybody's working on. But I got very intrigued by the idea of a daily email because I'm very much an email person. And this was kind of before or right at the beginning of when programmatic SMS text messaging was happening. And so pretty much everybody lived in their inbox, and arguably still does, right? But if an email,
toxically live in my inbox.
we all do. We all do. I've got it open next to the window here. But it's usually if an email comes in, you're more inclined to reply to it. Like the difference was trying to sign into an app or remembering to sign into an app versus an email comes to you, and that was a big change. And what I realized would be a neat twist on this was what did you spend yesterday? And then I would track that and show you a budget and show you, what you spent on. And it was just a neat little idea. I kind of needed it at the time because living in New York City, very expensive, spending way more than I was earning. I needed a way, and bad with personal finance, I needed a way to track my spending. And so the Birdie, which just happened to be a domain that I already owned, I was trying to come up with some clever, dailyfinancialapp.com, whatever. But I had already bought thebirdie.com, and somebody was like, that's really cute. Like the Birdie emails you and the Birdie says, what did you spend? And you say, hey, Birdie, this is what I spent, kind of thing. So
it's like this close to tweet.
Well, and that was the thing, was that I had originally decided that I was going to build a Twitter client, but the world does not need another Twitter client. But like everybody, as soon as you get an idea, you go buy the domain. So I had this domain, but it turned out to be, it was just one of those like coming together of things. And so the Birdie would email you once a day and say, what did you spend yesterday? And you would say $5 coffee, hashtag Starbucks or whatever. And it would track the hashtags, and it just very simple would log everything. And then once in a while you'd sign in and you'd see, oh, I spent, $1,000 at Starbucks this month. Maybe I should calm down.
Yikes.
The neat thing about the Birdie was two awesome things happened. I built a prototype in a weekend over a weekend, total MVP. Like that's, one, that's my skill set, and what my whole career has been based around is like, how do I build something rough and quick?
I just want to take a pause because the what you're talking about is something that I try to evangelize to the Groundhog customer base and audience, because it's super hard to do that. It's both easy. The actual implementation of an MVP is easy, but the psychology and the emotion of it is difficult. So can you tell us, like, and this might be because you just did it so many times before, but what was your mindset around just building an MVP and pushing the launch button as quickly as possible?
Again, it was the attitude of a lot of the startup thought leaders at the time. A lot of books, the Lean Startup and Rob Walling, Start Small, Stay Small, and there was just a general attitude coming out at the time, and 37 Signals too, who later became Basecamp. This idea of what the MVP, the minimum viable product. And one of the things that I think was really important to learn along the way was an MVP is not, it doesn't have to be an app. And people often talk about how do you do this manually? So, find 5 customers who have a problem in common and figure out how you can take their money and solve the problem, even if it's Googling, like 5 people want to find restaurants in, New York City. Like, take their $5, go get on Yelp, do the research, and hand it back to them. And if they found value in that, then only then put up a website, And it was that mindset that I think was really important. And then also just, getting over perfectionism, getting over your ego, getting over your fear, going through exercises like talking to customers, doing user testing, getting that negative feedback, and then persevering.
Yeah,
that's absolutely right. It's a big shift in thinking, and it was a big shift in thinking for a lot of people at the time.
Yeah, I see. We'll have to talk about that another time and really share kind of, because I've beat my own perspective on it to death, and I'm sure people are tired of me talking about it, but I'd love to hear more about your thoughts, because time and time again, it's I see people, they go and they buy $3,000 worth of plugins, my own included, and they load them up on their site, and they're trying to make it all work like right away before they've even proven that they have acquired product market fit. And it just kills me every single time, because they're getting in their own way, because they're putting in barriers, technical barriers. And I mean, don't get me wrong, we have to sell Groundhog to pay bills and make money, but they're putting, sometimes it becomes a technical barrier into someone actually being successful and achieving that product market fit, so that when they do buy Groundhog, they actually end up renewing their license. Because if you do put the cart before the horse, you're only going to, end up spending, you're going to spend $3,000 next year, but I guarantee you're not going to renew any of those licenses next year. So we're going to have to revisit this.
I think in especially in the context of Groundhog, there's the perfect system, funnel upon funnel upon funnel, emails and triggers, and I've actually seen, the first time I heard about building that kind of system that years ago was Invisionsoft, which is a beast. And I remember I was in a mastermind group with a woman who spent months coming up with the perfect funnel and flow and system and da 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 da. And I was like, didn't you just miss 2 customers for 2 months where you could have just put up literally like sign up for my newsletter and just started with one email, one trigger, one something.
Sometimes it's that easy, and I feel like the opportunity is missed
Yeah.
when people spend too much time. Like I always view kind of the systems like Buddy Boss, Lifter LMS, and Groundhog as ways to optimize and ways to scale already successful and proven platforms and products with product market fit.
Sure.
Like I always feel like they should be introduced later and not necessarily right at the beginning, because they are fairly extensive platforms. And sometimes all you really need is to throw up a static web page and be like, call me and I'll fix your problem.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think that that's important too, of, sort of the inverse, but in the same mindset is, these systems that you can grow with, but there's got to be you've got to just start with something at some point. And that was something else that I saw a lot of, small bootstrapping entrepreneurs get stuck at, or get stuck in, or what have you.
So they're trying to achieve the ideal vision before there's enough money in the bank to do it.
Well, and by all means, like, write in your journal, endless visions and what it's going to look like. I worked under a CEO in Nashville who presented his overall vision to me very well when we were talking about me working for them, where he drew concentric circles. And he's like, this is where we are. This is what I'm hiring you to do. But in 5 years, I want to be out here. And I was like, that's such a great way to think about it, because you're not just shooting for the moon from the beginning, like baby steps, because you need to be selling as fast as possible and getting things out there as fast as possible. You've got to be cooking the spaghetti to throw it at the wall to see what sticks. Now,
So I want to shift the conversation back to Kanban, because I listened to your WordPress, your WordCamp, both of your WordCamp presentations, and some of the trials and tribulations that you faced, which I'm not unfamiliar with myself, going through multiple versions of my other products like FormLift, and to an extent, like the shift between 1.0 and 2.0 for Groundhog, and also to an extent what we're working on now. But would you mind just sharing a little bit of your history with the Kanban product, and I guess the main topic of today, which is trial and error?
Sure. Which WordCamp present? I have like 8 presentations online, so you'll have to tell me which ones you watched.
The one where you talked about totally rewriting the thing.
Oh, and failing. And
yes.
And the deep emotional. Yeah. So
and we have let's keep it to like 10 minutes so that we can do Q&A.
You're already smartly getting the sense that I could talk for hours about this stuff. So I had reached a point where the tech was getting older, and we're not running as fast as people had grown into using it. So there were some scaling issues. I could not add certain features because of the way I had built it originally. Originally, I had built it very hard-coded for project management. And what I found was that a lot of people were not using it for project management. And so they were not interested in using it for, time tracking or that kind of thing. And I just couldn't grow with it. And then I also fell prey to the new shiny tech syndrome.
I think everyone in our group and anyone who listens to this call can appreciate that. We all fall victim to shiny new tech.
And WordPress was introducing React, and I waited an extra year to see whether React or Vue would win the argument. And okay, React won the argument, and so now I want to rebuild this plugin in React, and it'll also help me as a developer to learn this new tech that is integrated tightly into WordPress. And then I basically froze in place because I've never been a marketer. I've read all the books about marketing, but I just don't have the chops for it. It's not who I am. I am a developer, a product builder, not a marketer. I was trying to learn how to market, but I said I can't. I need to build the new version before I do any marketing, really. But I need to market this thing, to generate revenue in order for me to pay for, development or to develop it. I also did not know the tech, and so needed to learn this new tech. And again, it just, but insecurity kicks in, and one of the, I've worked remote for years and years and years, and one of the few downsides of working remote is the isolation. And especially when learning new things, you get stuck. Who do you talk to? And I've got people, small businesses, relying on my software, and so I need to make sure that I'm writing good software, but I'm learning new tech. So am I writing it the best way? Am I going to introduce big bugs? Like, you get to a point where, again, that I'm glad we talked about minimum viable everything, because you get to a point where you start to rethink that, or you start to worry about it. And there's still ways to integrate it or to use that mindset. But it's real easy to just start slipping. The other issue that happened at the time was, what was I going to say? Anyway, I know. I finally had this moment of realization that, my customers don't care. My customers don't care if it's React or Vue or Python.
They just want it to work.
They just want it to work. And so I managed to bang out a new beta, but again, immediately started running into issues. And by then I'd been running it for a number of years. So I was also kind of burning out on the overall concept, and I could never quite get over certain humps in running the business, and the whole thing ground me down. It just ground me down, and so it was a very emotionally tough time for me, because I just couldn't get out of my way. I didn't trust myself. I was stuck in these cycles of fear and insecurity, and instead of just and then the rebuilding anything from the ground up is nerve-wracking, and it's an age-old question in software development of whether it's a good idea or not. And every developer wants to start from scratch, because then you can build all new. I mean, and even look at 37 Signals, every version of Basecamp is not compatible with the previous version of Basecamp, because basically they want to. Like, it's more fun. Anyway.
It really, like rebuilding really it enables you to do things the right way that you didn't do right the first time,
and reapply or apply all of the understanding you have now. But there's just major risks that come with that. And again, I was in a mastermind group, and so they helped, and I had a therapist at the time, and she helped, but I just couldn't get out of my own way, and so I just got stuck for like a year.
Mm-hmm. And it happens. So, I get it. I'm sure there's a lot of people who are going to listen to this and relate. Like, it's like, being business, like developing product and being an expert is easy, right? But when business becomes involved and there's bills to pay, and you have to make like these hard decisions on, do I abandon this for the sake of money, or do I push forward and hope it works out? And and the mental battle that ensues, like that's where, that's where it gets real and it's tough. And I guess I just wanted to mention that because, for anyone else who's experiencing that, like, it's not just you, right? It's everyone. It happens and it's
Yeah.
okay.
There's the famous trough of despair in the overall startup trajectory, and there's these moments of insecurity or moments of you make mistakes, or these whatever it is, and it's tough, and it's just something you have to get through. There's no magic bullet. Obviously talking to people helps, but only if that kind of thing works for you.
Post in the Facebook group, in the Groundhogg support group. There's a ton of people, myself included, and now Cory and all of our certified partners, agencies, and other just successful small business owners. If you have, like Cory has mentioned, like these humps, these things which you cannot seem to surpass. They don't necessarily relate directly to technology or Groundhogg, but there's just these things in the business that you can't get out of your own way, right? Share them with someone, and I'm sure that someone in our organization or someone within our community will be able to maybe give you some sort of nice advice or help you or set you on the right path to overcoming that. That's just something that I'm going to throw out there. If you're currently in a similar situation, don't keep it to yourself.
Yeah, some of the other things that changed years ago in sort of broadly speaking, like startup thinking, that I take for granted now, but I know that people, and I'm sure some people listening are still haven't been exposed to or whatever, is transparency. Like that was another big thing that changed, and agility. And so to go into those for just briefly, like a lot of companies, especially tech companies up to that point, absolutely, everything under an NDA, doors shut, all software proprietary. But with the internet introducing more, public libraries of software and public forums and stuff like that, there became slowly, things became more transparent. And some companies took this to a radical degree where they're all of their employees' salaries are public and all that kind of stuff. You do whatever's comfortable with you. But a big thing that I think is really important for entrepreneurs, business owners, whoever, freelancers, to overcome is to be more transparent. There's only value to be gained by being more transparent. And it doesn't have to necessarily be public. It can be in a Facebook group, it could be in a mastermind group, it could be with a therapist, but talking, getting things out there, and working through them, getting input from other people. And then the other concept was agility. So in software terminology, software development used to be what was called waterfall, where something, some salesperson or a manager or somebody would say, okay, build this thing. And the software team would go off into a little room and build this thing, sometimes for years. And then and then it would fall over the waterfall, in that they would hand it back to the manager, and the manager would say, by then, like, nobody wants this thing, but because it's gone over the waterfall, you can't climb back up, you can't make changes, you can't. And it was just a very slow, clunky way of developing. And the idea of agile, which is a buzzword, and there's a capital A agile and a lowercase a agile, but as a concept, the idea of doing things in short spurts of time, a week or a month, doing, again, the minimum viable whatever. So it's like, if you're introducing a new product, how fast can you get something out the door that just solves the problem? Doesn't look like anything. It might be on a temporary domain, whatever it is, but just getting it out the door in front of people so that you can start getting feedback. And you can, the idea is that it eliminates that waterfall, that you can go back to, it's a circle, right? So you build something quickly, you get some feedback, and then you can iterate on it, and you haven't lost a lot of time. Like over the years, I've built literally dozens of products, and literally dozens of them have never seen a customer, never been used by anybody else. And because I got to the point where I could build a product in a weekend or a week or a couple of weeks, I'd only lose a weekend or a week or a couple of weeks instead of working on something for a year that nobody wants. And then, oh crap, I just wasted a year of my life.
I think that's a great takeaway. It's like not every single time is a winner. I can't tell you how many times we built Groundhogg extensions or integrations at month's expense. When the first developer I hired, I specifically chose him because his college degree was in building mobile apps. And I'm like, you know what Groundhog needs? Needs a mobile app. We had like 100 customers. We had not even 100 customers. We had 100 active installations. Probably only had like 50 customers. This is like all the way back in, I want to say December to, I want to say March of between 2018 and 2019.
All the cool kids have mobile apps.
All the cool kids have mobile apps. And then it's literally, I was actually paying this guy more than I paid myself at that point in time.
Yep.
Because that's what you do when you're the owner of a business and it's bootstrapped and you're making no money. It's you pay the staff more than you take home, and you eat macaroni and hot dogs, and that's just what you do.
Because it's your baby and you want to see it succeed. And,
right. So
sometimes throwing money at it is the
so
answer.
I threw months of salary dollars at this app that no one had asked for.
Yep.
And then the penny dropped when I read an article from Hotjar. I'm not sure if anyone here is familiar with Hotjar. It's an analytics tool. It gives you like a site map or heat maps on pages to see where people click, and you can like watch visitors, like their journey through your website. It gives you like a lot of cool insights. I've never actually used it, but it seems really cool. And the penny dropped when they shared an article about, we built this mobile app that no one wanted and no one asked for, and we spent literally hundreds of thousands of dollars on it, and it was a complete flop. And I'm like, I'm spending tens of thousands of dollars on this app and no one asked for it. Is it going to be a complete flop? And basically just started asking people, I'm like, do you need a mobile app? They're like, no.
Would never use it.
No
interest in it. Yeah.
I think out of like the 100 or so people that I asked, 3 people said, yeah, maybe use it.
Right. If it's there, I'll load it.
If it's there, I'll download it. And I'm like,
crap. Yep.
And that was just a monumental waste of not time, but actual money as well, because that person wasn't invested in the company. It's just collecting salary at that point. So it was just like, oh my God, what an epic fail. And I just thought I'd share that because I totally relate on like so many different levels. Like I totally got the whole MVP thing because Groundhogg built that in 2 months, because it's a fairly sophisticated product, right? Going to take a little bit longer than a weekend, but we were able to get something out in 2 months, which still for the kind of product that it is a pretty good turnaround time, I think.
Absolutely.
And then my entire mentality about that went out the window when it came to this app, because it just, we need to have one because like everyone else has one. And then it just ended up totally being irrelevant.
In the early 2000s, I was, again, making electronic music. At that time, it wasn't even dance music. I mean, it had beats, but it was experimental, weird. And I had my fans, but nobody followed me. Like I wasn't famous. I didn't. And so I paid, because this is what you did at the time. I paid thousands of dollars to have 1,000 CDs made that nobody had asked for. and there's a difference there, right? I mean, it's art, but I spent hours and hours and hours making the artwork for the album that
Is that
nobody.
what's behind you?
No.
I want to ask about that at some point, because it looks like that was done on Microsoft Paint.
Right. Well, and that's half the fun of it. But yeah, I mean, it was, so that in hindsight, I was like, I spent way too much time. And then past that, I made freaking t-shirts. I had no fans. Like nobody was listening. Like, again, I sold some of the album or some of the CDs, but eventually I actually started applying the MVP idea to, without even realizing it. And I realize it now, I would get 100 CDs pressed, black and white artwork, and I'd still spend way too much time on the artwork, but it's like, I should have been spending all of those hours just making better music, or getting better at making my music or whatever. But and there's a point, especially where it's art or a hobby, where it's got to be fun. So do what's fun, but like, I took this very seriously, whereas I love the age that we live in now, where some of these concepts are just baked into everything. So like, one of my favorite online apps is Canva, Canva.com.
Canva is the biggest lifesaver on planet Earth, man, for artwork.
It's a very dumbed down, graphic editor where you put text over photos or what have you. But so now, in branding myself as a musician, like, I've got a couple of colors, I've got my font, and it never takes me more than 10 minutes to make a piece of artwork, and I just don't care anymore. And in fact, like, I can't, my own test is, like, how big can I make the letters, so that, because it's, a lot of the times things are zoomed into, or way down to a thumbnail. And so I still want people to be able to read the title. Nobody cares what the art looks like. Nobody cares what as long as it's legible. And they might go, yeah, that's cool. Or they might think, it's, they might not remark on it at all. But if they're there for the music, I don't want them caring about the graphics particularly.
That's another profound observation.
I am very profound.
All right, I'm going to turn it into a profound observation. How about that?
Ouch.
People, at least, I work with a lot of course creators, or Groundhogg works with a lot of course creators. We're very tight with, like, the Lifter LMS community and the LearnDash community. Like, we do a lot of business in those two realms. And it's amazing how much time a lot of course creators spend on the layout of their lesson page versus the layout of their video or their actual course material. Now, those two things a lot of times go hand in hand. There has to be a certain layout for the course material to be legible and accessible, but we're also talking, they spend hours on deciding pixel margins between buttons and divs and whatever, when the content is what the actual user or the customer is there for.
The cynical reason that I went into WordPress product development is I built dozens of web apps for clients as well.
Yeah.
E-commerce sites, an app that picks baby names, whatever.
Yeah. And
what I discovered 9 times out of 10 was I would set it all up, and the business owner, especially if it was a WordPress site, the business owner, instead of adding new products to their e-commerce site, adding new baby names to their baby name picker, would spend hours messing around with design. Or if it was a WordPress site, would go in and install this plugin or that plugin, or, oh, it's Christmas time, so I need a plugin that makes it look like it's snowing.
I can't tell you how many times I've done that.
And so again, the cynical answer, the cynical reason I went into WordPress was I was like, these people, instead of doing what they're supposed to be doing, are messing around with free plugins because they're essentially procrastinating, but it feels productive. And so if I can build plugins that they find, I've essentially got a built-in audience. And to a degree, it's true.
Yeah.
Like you can build, I have another plugin out that I've literally never marketed, and I have 1,000 active installs, which is a respectable number.
That's a very respectable number for zero effort.
For zero effort, because people just stumble across it. And that it hurts me deep inside. And so it's, pushing pixels, waste of time. Like you've got to be, have fun, take breaks, have days where you mess around with pushing pixels or whatever, but pick,
there's diminishing returns on that, right? Like there's diminishing returns on tweaking design before product market fit, right? Obviously you want it to be good, but only just good enough. You don't want it to go, you don't want to go down the rabbit hole of trying to achieve perfection. If you're going to spend time on achieving perfection anywhere, it should be on the deliverables.
Well, and defer to experts, like, Bootstrap, which is a design, a UI, an easy way to make any website look handsome enough. Is one of my favorite things in the world. And I try very hard not to mess with it. A great example another great example in the WordPress industry is Give WP, which is a fantastic donation plugin. And I have it installed on one of my websites that takes donations. And I went in with all these expectations of how I wanted to set things up. But thankfully, a little light bulb went off that I was like, these guys handle donations for tens of thousands of nonprofits, websites. Like, they know, they are the experts on collecting donations. Just because I have an opinion doesn't mean I'm an expert. And so I at least started with their default everything. As long as it wasn't wrong, I'm going to just, install it, start collecting donations. It's probably going to be at least moderately successful because these guys know what they're doing. And I'm going to go back to making the website amazing, or to marketing the website to get more people to come in to make those donations. So, defer to experts as well, or defer to authorities, or to, again, that minimum viable, is this good enough? Does it look like a button? Yes. Then leave the padding alone. People will click on it or tap on it as long as it's big enough and looks like a freaking button.
People will click on it. That's what people do with buttons. They push them
if they look like buttons.
All right. Well, this has been enlightening on many levels, and I feel like you've articulated a lot of the things which I preach about, but it's not coming from me this time, so maybe people will listen.
And like you said, you gave me I had no idea what I was walking into this morning, so this isn't even, I wasn't even coached.
So for everyone who joined us today, I just want to say I'm extremely appreciative of your time. I know it's asking a lot of agencies and business owners to take an hour and 18 minutes out of their day to spend it with two random guys. So I appreciate your time. If you need additional help for any of the reasons that we talked about today, and you're looking for just a little bit more guidance, and you want some actionable direction on where to start, not only with Groundhogg, but maybe just on other facets of your business, we got so many resources for you to choose from. So go to academy.groundhogg.io. We got 5 or 6 free courses for you to go through and get some essential funnels set up and ready to go, so that your list is getting turned into dollars. The money's in the list, as it always has been and always will be. So there's lots of strategies on how to monetize that list on academy.groundhogg.io. If you're more the kind of business owner, though, who doesn't really want to watch those courses or deal with implementation, we have an alternative solution for you. Go to groundhog.io/find a partner. We have a list of certified partners who we've trained and communicate with regularly and have verified their work. So go to find a partner and we'll match you with a certified partner who is familiar with the tools that you're using, like BuddyBoss, LMS, LearnDash, obviously Groundhog, and specific niche verticals that they have experience in as well. If you know someone, you're familiar with either a colleague or another business owner, or even if it's friends and family, if you refer them to Groundhog and they end up picking up a license, we'll actually give you a 20% recurring commission when you refer a friend. And to become an affiliate and to get in on that action, go to affiliate area/registration and sign up. If you're not following Groundhog or myself on our social channels, you should start, because we love being part of the conversation. And I often share my own insights about running Groundhog, and I'm sure I'll be sharing some of Cory's insights as well. You can follow me on all the channels: Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter. I'm very active on Twitter. And you should also follow our Groundhog corporate channel. I'm mixing up funnel and follow. Funno.
Funnily enough.
So go to Groundhog is on all the social media channels, as well as subscribe to our YouTube channel, which is where we're going to post the replay of this as well. If you have yet to leave a 5-star review for Groundhog, please do. They're really helpful. We're at like 90, I think 91 5-star reviews, and that's amazing. If you can help us get to 100, that would be stellar. Get it? So it's a little star pun. They really help. They convince more people to use Groundhog, and when more people use Groundhog, we make more money, and when we make more money, that gets just immediately reinvested back into features that you're going to be able to use to make more money. It's a very reciprocal relationship. So you have 3 minutes today at the end of this call. Go to our WordPress.org listing and leave a 5-star review. If you have any additional questions that were not answered on this call, you do have recourse. You can continue to comment on this stream. We're going to be monitoring it, and we're going to make sure that you get answers to your burning questions. You can post in the Facebook group. That's exactly what it's there for. You can message us on our live chat, submit a ticket, or you can email me, info@groundhog.io, and I'll be happy to point you in the right direction. I want to thank everyone for taking the last hour and 21 minutes out of their day. I appreciate it. And I also want to thank Cory and welcome Cory onto the Groundhog team and thank him for his time and sharing his experience and his journey with us. So thank you, Cory.
And if anybody has any questions for me about my history, path, journey, opinions, haircut, just post them in the group. I'm around.
I appreciate that. Thank you. All right, everyone. The next session of Office Hours will be next week. It'll be an afternoon call, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and I'm looking forward to seeing everyone there. Thanks, and enjoy the rest of your day.